Hello, dear friend. Tonight on this sleep journey, I'm going to tell you the story of our home, our Earth, from its very formation, all the way to the first sparks of life. Go ahead and get into bed now. Find your most comfortable position and relax. Keep your ears on me. If another thought comes along, maybe an anxious one, don't worry about it. Just notice the thought and bring your focus back to me. Close your eyes, dear friend. Here we go. In the beginning, everything was very different. Before the Earth, before the planets in our solar system, even before the sun itself, there was a great star. Our solar system was not born from nothing. This star was enormous, and it led to a supernova. A supernova is what happens when a star with enough mass runs out of fuel and explodes with incredible energy. If you're curious, our sun isn't big enough for that. But for example, Pegasi, about 450 light-years away from us, is a serious supernova candidate. And Spica, about 260 light-years away, with roughly 12 times the mass of our sun, is one of the biggest supernova candidates out there. Let's get back to our story. When the star that came before our sun exploded as a supernova, it scattered the heavy elements it had forged in its core over millions of years, elements like carbon, oxygen, iron, and silicon, out into space. The iron in our blood today, the calcium in our bones, the oxygen that lets us breathe, those are the remains of that dead star. We are the legacy of an ancient star that died. We should be a little more aware of how remarkable that is. The dust of an ancient star has been sprinkled over us. That explosion left behind a massive cloud of gas and dust, right where our solar system sits today. A nebula. A nebula is essentially a star system factory. Planets and systems emerge from the chaotic mix of elements inside these structures, mostly hydrogen and helium, with smaller amounts of heavier elements. About 4.57 billion years ago, a shock wave from another nearby supernova compressed our nebula, and our nebula began to collapse under its own gravity. As the collapsing cloud spun, it sped up, just like an ice skater pulling their arms in to spin faster. We call this the conservation of angular momentum. It kept getting faster. The vast majority of the matter, and if we need to give a number, 99.86% of it, gathered at the center. This became the proto-sun. The remaining matter flattened out into a disk spinning around the sun. The inner regions of the disk were extremely hot because they were close to the sun. Only metals and silicates with high melting points could remain solid there. That's why the inner planets, dear friend, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, formed small and rocky. In the outer regions where temperatures were low, ices and gases could also condense. That's why Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune became massive gas giants, my friend. Pretty incredible, isn't it? Almost like a fairy tale. Science is truly extraordinary. We can describe things that happened billions of years before us. Sleep now, Stardust. As you rest, as you relax, keep your ears on me. We're continuing. The particles inside the disk first stuck together through electrostatic attraction, basically static electricity. This created tiny dust clumps, and as these clumps grew, gravity kicked in. It started pulling in bigger pieces. That's how planet embryos, a few kilometers across, formed. Then these embryos crashed into each other, like spinning Beyblades orbiting the sun, growing larger with every collision. This process is called accretion. About 50 million years in, the temperature and pressure at the core of the proto-sun climbed so high that hydrogen atoms began fusing into helium. The burning core inside the sun started running like the reactor in the game Frostpunk, and it became a main sequence star. Then the powerful solar wind, my friend, swept away the remaining gas and small particles in the disk. And that's how the planets were born. As proto-Earth grew through accretion, it accumulated enormous energy from three sources. The first was gravitational compression, the energy released as matter gathered together. The second was radioactive decay, the heat produced by elements like uranium and thorium. And the third was the constant bombardment of meteorites hitting the newborn planet. These meteorite impacts were like punches thrown at the heart of the Earth. Since life actually came into existence through this very path, maybe we could use a softer metaphor and call it cardiac massage. But these collisions were deadly. The energy from all these effects raised the surface temperature so high that Earth was like a ball of fire. Most of the planet turned into a molten magma ocean. In the beginning, dear friend, Earth's material was all mixed together. Iron, nickel, silicates, ice, and organic compounds scattered randomly. But as the temperature rose, the molten material began to separate by density. Heavy elements, dear friend, iron and nickel, sank toward the center under gravity. To put it properly, just like water sinking into sand, the lighter silicates rose toward the surface, and as a result, our baby Earth developed a layered structure. An iron-nickel core in the middle, a silicate mantle above it, and a thin crust on the outside. This differentiation led to a critical outcome. Thanks to the metallic core, a magnetosphere began to form. Without this magnetic shield, our Earth would have met the deadly side of our life-giving sun, and the solar wind would have stripped away the atmosphere. Our Earth would have ended up barren like Mars. Yes, the reason Mars is the way it is today is because it failed to develop a magnetosphere, dear friend. Proto-Earth's first atmosphere was mostly hydrogen and helium left over from the solar nebula. It resembled the atmospheres of today's gas giants and was completely unsuitable for life. But this first atmosphere was largely blown away into space by the solar wind, meteorite impacts, and the planet's low gravity. In its place, a new atmosphere formed through volcanic outgassing. This atmosphere contained water vapor, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. The solar system was still very chaotic when it was young, my friend. It was terrifying. Near Earth's orbit, another rocky planet the size of Mars was forming. Today we call that planet Theia. In Greek mythology, Theia is the mother of the moon goddess Selene. Theia probably formed at the L4 or L5 Lagrange point of the Earth-Sun system, meaning in the same orbit as Earth, 60 degrees ahead or behind. After staying there for millions of years, Venus's gravitational pull destabilized it and set it on a collision course with Earth. In a manner of speaking, Venus knocked Theia off its path and turned it into a rogue planet. Perhaps Venus set a trap for its sibling Earth. About 4.51 billion years ago, Theia slammed into Earth. The impact was so violent that a significant portion of both planets was vaporized. Earth's outer layers and Theia's material were flung into space. The result was a massive debris disk around Earth. The material in this disk came together under gravity to form our moon. So the moon carries traces of both Earth and the ancient planet Theia, my friend. Neil Armstrong also walked on the materials of an ancient planet, the traces of a vanished world. The moon rocks brought back during the Apollo missions have nearly identical isotope ratios to Earth rocks. Oxygen, titanium, tungsten isotopes. This shows that either Theia had a very similar composition to Earth, or the materials were completely mixed during the collision. Whenever I read about this subject, the possibility that we might be Theian rather than Earthling crosses my mind. If things had gone differently, maybe life would have sprouted on Theia instead. But then Theia wouldn't have been Theia to us, it would have been Earth. Because Earth means home, our home. We're the ones who gave it that meaning. Otherwise, Earth, like Theia, is just an ordinary little celestial body, a pale blue dot of no importance to the cosmos. We're the ones who loaded all this meaning onto it. In 2024, a study published in Science based on iron isotope analysis suggested that Theia formed in the inner solar system, probably closer to the Sun than Earth. The formation of the moon, my friend, didn't just add a pretty light to the sky. It fundamentally changed the Earth. Think about it. The violence of the impact tilted Earth's axis by about 23.5 degrees. Seasons exist because of this tilt, my friend. Summer, winter, spring, autumn. If Theia hadn't struck, maybe there would be no seasons. Maybe Earth would have remained a monotonous, uniform planet, and life would never have reached its current diversity. And consider this, after the impact, Earth was spinning wildly. A day was probably only 5 or 6 hours long. You wake up, it's noon, then evening, then night, then morning again. All in 6 hours. The moon's tidal forces slowed Earth's rotation over billions of years until we reached the 24-hour day we have now. So the night you're lying down to sleep right now, you actually owe it partly to the moon, my friend. Without the moon, nights wouldn't be this long. Maybe the concept of sleep would never have existed. And the moon was originally very close to Earth, probably 20 to 30,000 kilometers away. Imagine a massive rock covering half the sky. Today it's 384,000 kilometers away, and still moving 3.8 centimeters farther each year. We can measure this with the mirrors Apollo astronauts left on the moon. Yes, the moon is slowly drifting away from us. But don't worry, there are still billions of years to go. Keep relaxing, my friend. Take a deep breath. Our story is heading somewhere truly dark now, literally dark. Scientists gave a name to Earth's first 500 million years, the Hadean Eon. Hadean comes from Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. Yes, they meant hell, and they were right. The name was coined in 1972 by American geologist Preston Cloud. The man looked at the rocks, had almost no evidence from that era, and said, "This place must have been hell." He wasn't wrong either. Now close your eyes and picture this, my friend. You're looking at Earth's surface 4.4 billion years ago. There's no solid ground under your feet. Everywhere is molten lava, red, orange, yellow. A magma ocean stretching from horizon to horizon. The sky is shades of orange and red. A thick blanket of carbon dioxide and water vapor covers everything. You can't see the sun. The sun is already 25 to 30% dimmer than today, young and weak. Rain is falling, but the drops can't reach the ground because the surface is so hot they evaporate in midair. The air smells of sulfur. Volcanoes are erupting everywhere. Lightning illuminates the sky, and every few thousand years, a massive meteorite slams in and remelts the crust, that had barely started to cool. My friend, this isn't Mars. This isn't Venus. This is your home. Earth 4.4 billion years ago was hell itself. But wait, this is where the story gets interesting. Because for a long time, scientists imagined the Hadean period exactly like this. Completely molten, completely uninhabitable, completely hopeless. But then a tiny crystal changed everything. Zircon. Zircon, my friend, is an incredibly durable mineral. Extreme heat, pressure, erosion. Nothing can destroy it. Earth's surface was recycled over and over for billions of years. Plate tectonics swallowed everything and produced it anew. But zircons survived. Think of them as time capsules. They hold the chemical fingerprints of billions of years ago inside them. In Western Australia, 800 kilometers from Perth, there's an arid, desolate area called Jack Hills. Zircon crystals were found there, embedded in 3-billion-year-old sandstones. When their age was measured, the scientific world was shocked. 4.404 billion years. The oldest known material on Earth, my friend. This crystal is reddish, translucent, 400 micrometers long. A bit bigger than a dust mite, about 4 human hairs thick. Something that small tells the oldest story of our Earth. Incredible, isn't it? But the real bombshell came from the oxygen isotopes inside the crystals. These isotope ratios showed that the crystals formed from rocks that had developed in a cool, wet environment. So you know what that means, my friend? 4.3 to 4.4 billion years ago, when Earth was only 200 million years old, there was already liquid water on the surface. There were oceans in what was thought to be hell. In fact, a study done in 2024 went even further and showed that some zircons carried traces of interaction with fresh water. Fresh water means rain. It means an evaporation-precipitation cycle. It means dry land above the ocean surface. So Earth 4 billion years ago might not have been so hellish after all. A scientist from the University of Wisconsin-Madison put it this way. 4.4 billion years ago, Earth was cool enough to have continents above sea level, erosion, and sediment formation that requires the presence of oceans. Hell may not have lasted as long as we thought, my friend. So how did these oceans form? As the magma ocean cooled, the enormous water vapor in the atmosphere began to condense. Clouds formed, then rain. But this wasn't ordinary rain, my friend. Imagine a deluge that fell without stopping for thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years, covering the entire surface of the Earth. The sky never clears. Thunder and lightning never stop. Hot rain evaporates on the rocks, rises back up, and falls again, until the surface finally cools enough. Eventually, water began to pool on the surface, and a super ocean formed that covered nearly the entire planet. There was very little dry land. Maybe small volcanic islands, dark rocky outcrops poking above the water. Earth was an ocean world, my friend. A vast, gloomy, dark ocean. The sky was still orange and gray. No free oxygen in the atmosphere. You couldn't breathe. But there was water. And where there's water, there's hope. And during this time, the solar system still wasn't calm, my friend. According to a theory called the Nice model, the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, shifted their orbits. Jupiter moved toward the Sun. Saturn moved outward. This orbital dance disrupted the asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt, flinging millions of rocky and icy objects into the inner solar system. This is called the Late Heavy Bombardment. roughly 4.1 to 3.8 billion years ago. Think about it. The ocean has barely formed, the crust has barely cooled, and then rocks the size of Kansas start raining from the sky. Some of these impacts were powerful enough to vaporize the oceans, much larger than the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. But I should mention, this theory has been debated in recent years. In 2019, a team from the University of Colorado Boulder suggested that the bombardment might have actually happened much earlier, 4.48 billion years ago. The samples Apollo astronauts collected represent only 4% of the Moon's surface, and they were all gathered near the Imbrium crater. So maybe what we're seeing isn't a system-wide bombardment, but the traces of a single, massive impact. Science is like that, my friend. Even things that seem settled get questioned, changed, evolved. But whether it was early or late, the bombardment couldn't destroy Earth. A researcher from Colorado Boulder put it beautifully. He said, "The bombardment didn't chop down the tree of life, it pruned it. Underground, in the cracks between hot rocks, in the thermal vents deep in the ocean, heat-loving microbes could have found shelters to survive. So Earth was beaten, burned, bombarded, but it didn't give up, my friend. Just like you don't give up on your hard days either. Relax, sleep, take another deep breath." Now we're coming to perhaps the most fascinating part of our story, the transition from lifeless matter to life. Think about it. There's nothing but rocks, water, gases, and minerals. There's no such thing as life. Nowhere is there a cell, a bacterium, a DNA molecule. Just chemistry. And somehow this chemistry is going to transform into something that copies itself, grows, and evolves. How? The raw material of life is carbon-based organic molecules, amino acids, nucleotides, lipids, sugars. The question is, where did they come from? In 1952, at the University of Chicago, a young graduate student named Stanley Miller and his advisor, Harold Urey, carried out a bold experiment. In a sealed glass apparatus, they combined water, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen gas. They mimicked the atmosphere of early Earth. Then they sent electric sparks through it, simulating lightning. Just 2 days later, when they analyzed the water, they found amino acids in it, my friend. The building blocks of life, formed from lifeless matter, in a simple lab setup, in 2 days. Miller was only 22 years old at the time. A 22-year-old kid touched the secret of life. Science sometimes picks you up off the floor like that. But organic molecules didn't only form on Earth. Amino acids have been found in meteorites. Organic compounds have been detected in comets. They even exist in interstellar gas clouds. The Murchison meteorite that fell in Australia in 1969 contained more than 12 amino acids. So space may have sent the raw materials of life to Earth through bombardment. Ironic, isn't it? The very meteorites that pummeled Earth were also delivering the ingredients of life, destruction and creation at the same time, with the same stone. So where did these molecules come together? This is where several competing theories come in, my friend, and scientists are still arguing. First, the primordial soup hypothesis. In shallow oceans, along the shores of volcanic islands, organic molecules accumulated through the energy of ultraviolet radiation and lightning, forming increasingly complex structures. Even Darwin imagined something similar. He called it a warm little pond. The second theory, and the one I find far more exciting, is deep-sea hydrothermal vents, In 1977, scientists discovered black smokers at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Massive chimneys spewing superheated, mineral-rich water from cracks in the Earth's crust. And around these vents, entire ecosystems thriving without sunlight, living on chemical energy. Tube worms, giant mussels, strange shrimp. Life without needing the sun. This discovery changed everything, my friend. On early Earth, the sun was already weak, and ultraviolet radiation on the surface would have scorched any living thing. But at the bottom of the ocean, around hot vents, there was a sheltered, energy-rich, mineral-rich environment. Life may have begun in the dark. German chemist Günther Wächtershäuser proposed that life started on the surfaces of iron-sulfur minerals in these vents. Imagine the bottom of the ocean. Pitch-black darkness, a chimney spewing water at 300 to 400 degrees. Dissolved iron, nickel, sulfur all around. These minerals acted like catalytic surfaces, converting simple inorganic compounds into organic molecules. The first stirring of life may have happened in the dark, under pressure, on the surface of rocks. And there's something else, a theory called the RNA world hypothesis. Today, life flows from DNA to RNA to protein. But which came first? DNA needs proteins to be copied. Proteins need DNA to be produced. The chicken or the egg? RNA solves this paradox, because RNA can both carry genetic information and speed up chemical reactions. It can be both gene and enzyme. This is called a ribozyme. According to the RNA world hypothesis, at the dawn of life, RNA served as both information storage and worker. Self-replicating RNA molecules emerged, and natural selection began to operate. The ones that copied more efficiently multiplied. The bad copies were eliminated. Darwin's rules were already running at the molecular level before cells even existed, my friend. The strongest evidence is the structure of the ribosome. Think of the ribosome as the factory inside the cell that produces proteins. And at the very heart of this factory, at its active center, there's no protein at all. It's entirely RNA. This is essentially the smoking gun that life descended from an RNA-based past. Then one day, maybe near a hydrothermal vent, maybe in a shallow coastal pool, lipids, meaning fatty acids, spontaneously formed spherical membranes in water, the most primitive version of cell membranes. When these membranes trapped RNA and other organic molecules inside them, the first protocells were born, my friend. Tiny bubbles isolated from the outside world, with their own internal chemistry. They weren't alive yet, but they weren't lifeless either. They were somewhere in between, standing at the threshold of life. When these protocells began competing with each other for resources, the more efficient ones survived. Over time, DNA, a more stable molecule than RNA, took over the job of storing genetic information. RNA shifted to its messenger role. Proteins took on the role of workers. And one day, probably around 4 billion years ago, around those dark, hot, mineral-rich vents beneath the ocean, the first true cell divided. Luca, the last universal common ancestor of all life, the oldest shared grandparent of you, me, a bacterium, and a whale, a single-celled, simple organism that breathed without oxygen, probably trembling in the warm water of a hydrothermal vent. In the Nouveau-Agituk Belt in Quebec, Canada, hematite tubes and filaments were found in rocks at least 3.77 billion years old, possibly 4.28 billion years old. They resemble today's hydrothermal vent bacteria, my friend. In the Isua region of Greenland, 3.7 billion-year-old stromatolite fossils were discovered. These are layered structures formed by microbial communities. In the Pilbara region of Australia, there are confirmed fossils 3.48 billion years old. And so, my friend, from a molten ball of lava, from a rock beaten by meteorites, forged in the fires of hell, in the darkest corner of the ocean, in a place no one could see, life sprouted. Quietly, humbly, it began with a single cell. That single cell was the seed of an enormous tree that would, billions of years later, create beings like you and me. Isn't it strange when you think about it? You're lying in your bed right now, eyes closed, listening to this story. And you are actually part of that story. You are the billions of years long continuation of that first cell. You are stardust. You are a child of the ocean. Sleep now, my friend. Sleep, stardust. When the sun rises tomorrow, remember that its faint light has been burning for 4.57 billion years. Good night.